So that was definitely a bottom 10 Saturday of my life. I mean, I've had some good Saturdays before. I don't think I've really had a lot of bad Saturdays, but that was a bad Saturday, all things considered. So the sports sucked. A&M, the other thing that happened in the state of Texas, we don't have to talk about it. I also happened to shatter that picture frame back there. The picture's fine. The frame shattered. Both fingertips got cut. Happened during the game. Rough game for me and everybody else. How are you guys recovering? It's been a It was tough to wake up Sunday morning, wasn't it? It was a sour morning Sunday morning, man. It was not a good feeling. We had to sit with it, we had to digest it. This is a rough sports day, man. This is what sports is. High highs and then built in with it, it's gonna tug at your heart, man. That's what this thing does. And this was a big loss, man. I always feared this loss because of how it would feel. I always feared how this fan base would react to it. Hopefully the players aren't reacting the same way a lot of us are. I mean, I think we have the right to be pretty upset about this performance, especially since most of the issues that resulted in the loss, aside from Miami just being better than I think a lot of us expected, but a lot of our downfalls seemed like they could have been prevented by different coaching decisions, which we'll get into in this video. And that kind of makes it sting even more, because that's the kind of stuff we saw last year. I mean, Dirk in year one, a lot of questions with the three-man front, lack of a pass rush last year, a lot of youth on the defense last year, D-line last year, injuries to the leaders up front. I mean, some of that stuff was more excusable last year, but to see some of that stuff persist into this season, that's what I feared. That's what I feared the reaction to. This was always going to be the biggest game of the year, in my opinion, at least in terms of A&M being able to achieve its highest goals on the year. Because right now, I'm sure we don't feel like we're a playoff contender right now. It's early, and we'll talk about the fact that it is early and there's still a lot to play for. But we really don't feel that right now. We feel like this team's going to have to figure some things out in some tough games very soon. And it's just a measuring stick. How do you feel against Auburn and Arkansas now? How do you feel against Mississippi State, Ole Miss, on the road at Tennessee, LSU? I mean, this measuring stick, it's scary. And we were on the wrong side of it. So this was always my fear. It came true. And then also other things that happened Saturday also sucked. But let's try to back ourselves away from the cliff here. I mean, we could bitch and moan all week. We could point at the negatives all week. But let's still try to have fun with football. We're still in the beginning of a brand new season. There's a lot to play for still, obviously. Let's try to bring it up a notch, just like this team is hopefully going to do this week. So let's do our best in doing that. Today I'm going to break down the game. I'm going to tell you what I saw watching the film, some issues, some area of concerns, but I'm also going to bring up some positives. Because yes, there are positives in this game, especially offensively. So we're going to talk about everything, but first I want to talk about moving forward. The season is not over, guys. It is not by any means over. And yes, I just said that we obviously don't feel like we're a playoff team right now. But that's technically not true, obviously. But the SEC West looks a little bit shaky this year. It really does. LSU's already lost in a pretty convincing fashion to a really good team. Bama just lost at home to Texas. Mississippi State, we still don't really know. Arkansas struggled yesterday. Ole Miss struggled on the road versus a good Tulane team, but they were missing their star quarterback. So there's still opportunity in this season based on the schedule if this team progresses. Remember 2020, how we felt after weeks 1 and 2? Remember we had a slog of a game versus Vanderbilt. That game sucked. I think we put up 20 points, and then we went and got beat by 30 by Bama the next week. And then we had Florida come into town, and we felt like the whole Jimbo thing was about to collapse. But it didn't. A&M wound up finding their identity. The Maroon Goons were born, and A&M pushed forward with their best season within the last 10 years. Now, I'm not comparing that then to now. I'm comparing the scenarios. Anything can happen, and of course, that's one of the possible outcomes that we're hoping for. They were able to adapt, change, improve from a terrible performance into one of the best performances we've seen from A&M. So obviously that's the trajectory we're hoping for and we're wishing for. But it's really going to come down to what these coaches decide to do, what the defense decides to change up to generate some kind of quarterback pressure, especially on these pocket passing quarterbacks. A couple more of those coming up. Will Rogers comes to mind. And where are they going to adjust and where are the players going to improve? So let's get into the Miami game. Let's talk about the offense. Let's talk about the defense, positives and negatives. Let's start positive. You know, we're trying to be positive here. We're trying to push forward. Let's talk about the offense. Once again, not going to bury the lead that has and will continue to be Connor Wigman. Showed some big ol' cojones in this one. You know, he had some mistakes early in the game, not getting some plays in on time. I don't know if that was him or the coaching staff. The coaching staff seemed to blame him, but Connor seemed like he was looking at the sideline until about 5 seconds left. I don't know if that's his mistake or not. A couple maybe didn't make his decision quick enough against the blitz early in the game. But then he got better and better and better as the game went on. And at the end of the game, it seems like he was just diming and dishing out there and making great plays, great passes, passing the ball with defenders in his face, making the right check down pass, scrambling at the right time against the right looks. I think as long as you have a quarterback like that, you have a chance in most games. Just like A&M did have a chance in this game at times. We'll talk about how it broke down in a second. But you have to be encouraged with Connor in these first 2 games of the year. You have to be. And the offense is not perfect. The offensive line still has some issues. Now, I will start before I get into those issues by saying it's not like the disaster situation that was the offensive last year, where it was just jailbreak after jailbreak. Do you remember the Arkansas game last year, where it seems like every single play there was a bust in pass blocking, and the quarterback had immediate pressure in his face almost every time he dropped back to pass? I feel like the offensive line pass blocked pretty good this game. Not great, pretty good. The biggest issue came with some of their blitz pickup stuff. A lot of miscommunication. That's where some of the biggest issues on the offensive line were this game. And a lot of that was between the center and the left guard. The left guard interchanges between Naboo and Dewberry. And they both had issues picking up blitzes with the center. They're communicating who gets who on the line every single play. And a lot of times the blitzer ran through unchecked between them two, with one of them not having someone to block. And that is obviously something that they're going to have to clean up. But it wasn't every play. It happened at times, but it wasn't happening every single play. Another issue was they didn't really look for the corner blitz, and of course that's a very sneaky blitz. You're not going to see it every time, especially if they time it right. But there were times where they were able to see it, able to call it. I don't know what they're coached to do in that scenario. Sometimes it goes to the running back. Sometimes it just goes to the quarterback and he has to make a play. But a lot of times, once again, there were players that didn't have people to block, and there was no call or even a look at the corner blitz. And I'm more so looking at maybe that slot nickel blitz, that outside linebacker blitz that didn't get picked up. It looked like that was a call that was missed by both tackles at times. Everybody had some blown plays, but I think most of the missed assignments or whiffs, when I say whiff, I mean they missed the block. They didn't block them right. They got out. They just got beat by another player. It happened with the left guard and the center quite a bit, I thought. What did you guys think? That's where I saw the issues mostly, left guard and center, and then making those tackle calls. It wasn't terrible, though. They were able to get some production running today. Some decent blocking, some decent run blocking, but nothing good enough to enable the players to consistently get to that next level. They were good at generating 4 to 5 yard gains, 3 to 5 yard gains, but not good at, explosives or anything like that. It was adequate, but they still have issues getting to that second level, combo blocking up to the linebackers. It seems like they're inconsistent at that, but not disastrous. Not like last year. So I think the O-line definitely has room to improve, and I think it can. I think a lot of this stuff can be hammered out in practice, and especially with Bryce missing so much practice due to injury, being sick last year, having track responsibilities during spring ball, I think he's going to improve a lot over the course of the year. Because physically, this offensive line looks really good. Physically, they rarely just get beat. They rarely get out physical. It's mostly just like bad technique where they are getting beat or just not making the right calls. And the reason I spend so much time on the offensive line, obviously, is just because it was such a big talking point in this offseason. That was the thing that was going to determine if this offense was going to be good or not this year. And I think it's good enough and it's showing enough signs of improvement to be very promising on the year. And I think we're going to have a good O-line, at least by the middle point of this season. I think it's going to get better and better. Receivers looked good. Now, the thing that they were doing well to limit some of the big plays was, like I said, those corner blitzes, where basically the quarterback just has a clock that starts as soon as the corner's blitzing because there's no one going to pick him up. You got to get the ball out of there, and that kind of limits his ability to wait for those big throws. He has to hit the check down. So a lot of that was limited by their scheme, which was good, but Connor was able to, play ball with that, which is good to see. So not a lot of big stuff until late in the game when they got a little bit more conservative with the blitz. Then they were able to dial up some of the bigger play stuff, bigger chunk plays, deeper passes, bigger plays. Evan Stewart got involved. A note on Evan Stewart, he had 3 pretty big errors this game. And bear with me while we go through them. It's obviously not selling out to get those 2 first downs. That left basically 8 points on the board if you're able to convert on those goal line scenarios. And the way this offense was looking that day, they probably had a good chance to convert on those. And if not, at least get the field goal still. But they were pretty good. The offense was pretty good. So I would be pretty confident if they had a fresh set of downs inside the 10 that they would have gotten into the end zone. So maybe you leave 8 points on the board there, settling for 3 instead of getting 7 if Evan gets the first down there. And he also had the big, I guess you call it a drop late in the game where he jumped for a jump ball at the sideline. And it seemed like he felt footsteps and kind of bailed on it last second because he felt like he was going to get smashed. Natural reaction, but a player like that, you think he still could make that play. But Evan Stewart was still absolutely great in this game. He just has a knack for getting open. He and Connor have a great connection. And when you have a player that is just so involved in your offense, there's reason to believe that you're just going to have to live with some of those lumps at times. These are college players. They're not going to be perfect, and Evan is still only in year 2. He's going to get better and better. And if this is, still the beginning half of Evan's career, he's going to be so good by the time this season keeps rolling on. He's going to be so good. They were able to limit Noah Thomas early. He got a little bit more involved late. Very much a deep pass threat. And like I said, they were limiting that stuff just by their scheme. It was interesting not to see Moose Muhammad get involved. It seemed like A&M was really prioritizing more of those power looks with 2 tight ends, getting the running game going, getting a fullback in there. Big hats off to Crown over getting his touchdown, that passing touchdown, huge late in the game. He caught a beautiful ball from Connor, scored his first receiving touchdown. I don't know if he had a running touchdown in his career. I believe he has, but his first receiving touchdown of his career. He was hyped up. And then that 2-point conversion right after that where Miami, did simulate the snap count, whether it was intentionally or not. One of their safeties clapped really hard and loud. Bryce snapped the ball. The ball went rolling. You didn't really get a good look at it. That did happen. I know a lot of people are pointing and laughing at Jimbo for bringing that up in the post-game presser. He was asked about what happened on that play, and he answered honestly. They simulated the snap count, and they did. Whether it was intentionally or not, they did, and that's illegal. But, the only reason I really point out that penalty is because so many people are pointing and laughing at it. There were bad calls on both sides. We're not gonna blame refs because it's a shit show regardless with refs. You got to live and die by it. So both bad calls on both sides. You got to put yourself in a better position outside of that. Now for this offense, I think what really killed this offense, and maybe you could argue killed our chances of winning this game, were the timing of those 2 huge turnovers. The one where Anias slipped, the safety got the interception. That ball was going to be caught if Anias doesn't slip, or at least it's going to be interacted with by Anias and not be intercepted most likely. A&M was driving consistently. They were at least getting in field goal range most drives. And there's reason to believe they would have done that there because that would have been a first down at around midfield. And that was the drive after their big special teams kickoff return. So you have that huge special teams play, and then the very next drive, that extremely unfortunate slip and turnover. The timing there was brutal. The momentum shift there was massive. Really, really tough turnover right there. Really tough. And they got a field goal on that next drive, I believe. But the momentum swing there, taking the possession away, after that kickoff return was very tough. That was very tough. And then the huge hit and fumble on Amari Daniels, obviously that gave them the ball in position to score, and they did in a critical time of the game once again. That was I think the blocking was good enough on that play for Amari not to bust outside, follow his blockers, and he could have gotten 1 yard by following his blockers, even though it wasn't blocked perfectly. I think if he just relies on those big bodies, kind of rides them through the line, he could have gotten a first down. He bounced it. Number 22 got lined up for an amazing, perfect hit. Helmet right on the ball. Great play by Miami. That was some badass football right there on them. Hats off to that guy. He made a great tackle, a great play on that ball. But I do think Amari could have made a better decision there. Quick note on Amari. I really like Amari Daniels. I really like the running game they established early in this game, although only ended up with 97 yards, but they were playing catch-up at the end, had to get some big chunk plays, went away from the run late. I like Amari's decisiveness besides that play. I like his ability just to hit whatever daylight he sees, and he hits it hard with determination. He has good acceleration. I think as this O-line progresses, Amari is going to really be able to feed off of them and really, really play with his blockers really well. I like that about him. I like how he sees daylight and he goes and gets it. So a lot to be excited for. I really like Ruben Owens getting involved in the receiving game. Had some big plays through the air. I like the tight ends getting involved. Both tight ends got involved in the receiving game this game. Both tight ends seemed to block better this game. Not perfect yet, but better. I love Jake Johnson's tip drill grab, even though that drive got destroyed by the fumble. That was awesome to see him have his head on the swivel and get that play. So you like to see some of the progression. You like the progression on the offense. I really didn't have too much of a problem with the play calling after my second look at it. And I understand why they weren't targeting that home run stuff as much because of the blitz. I like this offense, and I think it bodes well moving forward that the quarterback is so good. Connor's a really good quarterback, guys. I love the way he runs. I love how tough he is. He doesn't really slide. He goes for the extra yards, which is a little scary, but he's a big boy. So, guys, I think there's a lot to be excited about with this offense. I wanted to start positive with the offense. A lot of stuff to be excited about before we talk about the defense. So, I want to ask you guys, what would y'all do with DJ Durkin? Would you pull that trigger early in the year? Would you pull that trigger now and move on from him and maybe promote from within or do some interim DC? I know a lot of us are really upset about DJ Durkin. I think rightfully so. There was no pressure on the quarterback down the stretch. There was some blitzing earlier in the game, but as the game went on, there was less and less of it. And Tyler Van Dyke was the kind of quarterback that if you give him time, despite the coverage, he's probably going to find someone with a window. So that made the DBs look even worse on the night than they already were with tackling. They tackled poor on the night, absolutely, especially down the stretch. But the lack of a pass rush, I think, totally doomed this defense. Tyler Van Dyke, their skill positions, I knew their receivers were good, but they had more good receivers, athletic, shifty. They had more serviceable receivers than I thought. And the receivers that they did have that we did know about, Restrepo, Young, they were better relative to our DBs than I thought as well. They were good players. So a quarterback like TVD, those receivers, bad night for the DBs, of course that's a recipe for disaster. And that's what happened. The 3-man pass rush, the 4-man pass rush down the stretch, I thought was pretty inexcusable. You had to bring a look. You had to bring something, especially with how good their O-line is at just blocking straight up. Those tackles are really good, guys, on Miami. They have some good tackles because A&M doesn't have the best edge rushers, but Shamar Turner, Fadil Diggs, Shamar Stewart, those guys are pretty good players. They're not great. They're not Myles Garrett. They're not Von Miller, but they can get pressure at times, and they did it in a couple of scenarios early in the game. But as their O-line settled in, it didn't happen. So, of course, we're calling for blitzes, and we just didn't see it. TVD has time. He gets players in stride. He gets players where they're supposed to get the ball. They get the ball when he has that much time. They're able to make a play. And I think that was the story of this defense. A couple positives. Walter Nolan is emerging, I think, as the best D-lineman on this team, as he always had the potential to be. Just so good at occupying players, shedding off blocks to make the tackle in the lane. Just a really solid D lineman. I thought Torian York looked great. Just great discipline, great toughness, kind of riding blocks to the right spot and being in position to make the play. Honestly, maybe not the most athletic guy, but just as disciplined, I think, as Edgerrin Cooper. Just as good in that capacity. Edgerrin's way more athletic than him, I think, at least in these early looks we've gotten of the two. I really like Torian York. I really, really like him, and I see how he gained the starting status going into the year. Just a really, really good player. What else was positive on this defense? The DBs, they just had a bad night at the office. Just getting burned. Damani got burned. It seems like Damani takes the eye candy, man. It does. It seems like if there's a what is that? If there's like a cut or a fake by the route runner, that oftentimes Damani's going to bite on it and, get beat. And it happened a couple times. Damani's really secure in tackling. He's really good at run support, but man-to-man coverage is not his forte. That's to be understood based on him being a safety and the way this defense is so versatile. You ask these safeties to man up all the time. So there's some less than ideal matchups, especially when those receivers are looking that good. I singled Damani out only because he's a senior leader, and we know what he is. We know what he can bring to this team. There was that kind of stuff all over the place. Their offensive coordinator did a great job of getting our defense out of position with motion. If you go back and rewatch the game, a couple of their big plays, including a scoring touchdown, was off of motion and getting the man defender clogged up in the line of scrimmage with all the blockers and then having the receiver squirt free out of there. That happened all the time. Great play design there. And they couldn't tackle. It was just that kind of a night for the defense, Just not a great defense at stopping the pass against that kind of passing attack. And once again, great quarterback they have, really good offensive line, and better than expected receivers. But it does look like this defense has improved in stopping the run. So the adjustments from week 2 to week 3 and going forward into SEC play defensively, they need to find pressure. That's first and foremost. I trust, and I don't know about you guys, maybe you give me some feedback here. We've seen most of these DBs play last year. Jardin, Bryce Anderson. We know what DeBerry is based on his time at Boston College. Tyreek Chappelle. We know these guys can tackle. We know these guys can make plays in space. It was a bad day. It was a bad day. Do you guys think that they can improve on that tackling? Honestly, I do. I think they can because they've shown it before. And they should be even better this year being a year into it. The slippery floor did not help in this department. There were several times where the plant foot just slipped out from under the tackler. Cuts were much more devastating when you're reacting to the cutter and you can't really plant as well with the slippery floor. The equipment team took an L on the day. Because Miami, they did slide a little bit, but not as much as A&M was sliding. Wrong shoes, wrong cleats, I don't know what it was. But that was definitely a factor. But also, they were just bad at tackling. Bad in coverage. But all that is mitigated at least somewhat by better pass rush. And we hope eventually better tackling. So can DJ Durkin dial it up? Can he adjust? Can he adapt? This team was never going undefeated. I don't think. Not this year. I think next year's team on paper has more of the, and based on the schedule, has more ability to have that expectation. That wasn't many people's expectation this year. I think even the most positive Aggies were 11-1. I think 9 wins is still on the table, guys. And I think that's a number that most people are targeting for having a good year. I think that's still on the table. I really do. I think based on this offense, based on the quarterback we have, this team's not that young anymore. It's really not that young. So that's not an excuse. I think these players have the ability to be really good this year. It's going to be the decisions these coaches make from week 2 to 3 to 4. Because Auburn and Arkansas are going to be winnable games. Arkansas, like I said, struggled. Auburn's not there yet. They could both beat us, but A&M should beat them. And then you have Bama at home. We know they're beatable. So if you get any kind of improvement going into that Auburn game defensively, I think this team can win the next 3 games for sure. I think it's very much on the table. As bad as we feel right now, everything is still to play for, guys. And that was the case last year after App State. But Miami's not App State, and it wasn't at home. And the offense didn't look like this. And the defense was getting manhandled by App State last year. App State. So I feel a lot better in week 2 this year than last year, even though I do not feel good. I feel better long term. Not maybe right after the loss because of all the things I mentioned about this being such a big game. But guys, the season's still ahead of us. I don't think we should be depressed. It really makes me sad when I see people saying, I'm done with Aggie football. I'm not watching a lick of it. I'm done. I'm out. It makes me really sad because there's just so much more to play for this year. So much to be excited about. So many great players on this team to watch develop. And we still have 10 games left, guys. It's just starting. Don't forget the excitement you had just a couple of days ago. Don't forget it. That's still there. And I think these players, I hope these players come together after this, because if they come together, this team could come out even better. Now, that's obviously an optimist point of view, but we're being positive here, guys. We had the bad day yesterday, or Saturday, whenever you're watching this. It was on Saturday. I'm recording this Sunday. But, guys, that is all I have for you today. Leave any comments you have about this thing down below. Subscribe if you're new here. I would really appreciate it. Trying to get this thing to 1,000 subs by the end of the season. We've had some great discussions in the comment section, guys. Love to see that. We got to come together. Don't be at each other's throats. I'm thinking on Monday or Tuesday night about doing a live show where you guys can call in and just tell me what's on your mind. Really give you the microphone for the night. Would anybody be interested in that? That's what I'm leaning towards doing. I did my first live show after the game. Thank you for those of you that tuned in. Thank you for those of you that watched the recording. But I'm thinking about doing that just to let you guys vent. Bitch, you're allowed to bitch. You're allowed to do that. Or give me reasons for optimism live on YouTube. But guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you very soon with that and the pregame video for ULM. It's going to be mostly about us. This week's going to be about A&M improving, showing signs of improvement in those areas of concern. But I'll see you next time, guys. Thanks, and gig 'em.